Okay, the next part of this makeover, I'm gonna talk about how to repair, you can see it here, the veneer on pieces. There are 3 different techniques that I like to use when I'm repairing veneer, depending on the piece, but today I'm just gonna show you one of those ways and methods. It's really easy. It's really easy to work with. And it gives you a smooth finish. This is going to be the process you'll want to use if you're going to paint. And so I am definitely going to paint this piece. And so I am going to use Dixie Belle's mud to repair this veneer. And I will just do it here on one of the drawers. But I have some veneer. I've already cleaned this piece really well. I have some veneer to fix here. And I think there's some on the other drawers. Those are over there. But I will just share this, these drawers here with you and show you how easy this is to do. So I have already cleaned the outsides of the drawers and all of this piece really, really well. I used my shop vacuum. I've done all that. So I took the hardware off. And now before I do any scuff sanding, since I will need to sand this Dixie Belle paint or Dixie Belle mud before I paint, I'm not going to do any scuff sanding now because I'm going to do it all at the same time. So this stuff, it's kind of like, what do I want to say? Putty, but not as thick as putty. And I just use a plastic scraper, really easy. I do always like to have a spray bottle and then some paper towels or a rag next to me when I'm doing this. So let me see how I can do this so you guys can see this the best. Okay. Here we go. All right. So all I'm going to do is one little tip you want to do is once you're spreading this on, so let's say, and then you get it on where you want it and you have excess, do not put it back in your putty or in the mud. Just wipe it off. Just wipe it off with a paper towel, that excess, because even if you've cleaned this, maybe you've sanded it, you just don't want any debris getting into the product and then ruining the product. So just don't put your putty knife back in here once you've got it. I'm getting not really low on this, but that worked out. Okay. So basically what you're going to do is you're going to put it on your putty knife like this. And I love this stuff because you don't have to know how to do this. You don't have to be a perfect cake decorator or anything to make this work. You're basically just, what you're going to do is you're going to cover that area that you need to fill in. And you're going to, initially, you're going to be kind of thick with it. And I will lift this up so you can see. So I'm just scraping it here off the edge so I can get a little more. And then on the top layer, you kind of want to have a light hand with it. If you can see, I'm not really pushing down because I'm wanting to fill in that area where the veneer is gone. So, I mean, that's pretty good coverage, but I'm going to put a little bit more here on the end. I almost stuck my putty knife in there. Don't do that. So I just want a little bit more right there. There we go. And this stuff is so flexible. You can't mess it up. You can put on multiple layers. So let's just say this dries and it kind of sinks a little bit or kind of goes into where the veneer is missing and it's not flat, if that makes sense. So when it's dry, just put on another layer. It's okay to do that. So I'm going to show you here. There it is. Just going to shut this. You do want to shut this. You don't want to leave it open because you do not want it to dry out. And it'll clean really easily off these plastic putty knives. I mean, and then you can run it underwater if you want it, more clean, or use your spray bottle. And so this is what it looks like. I'm going to try and, whoops. If you can see, it's not perfectly flat, but yet you can't, the indent of that, you see more of the streaks of the mud than you do the indent of that veneer. And so I shouldn't say the more the better, but go ahead and put on a thick layer on your initial kind of like pass over, because you want that veneer to be filled in, because you want this all, once it's dried, you want it to be, you know, that once you sand it, then it will all be one layer, the same layer as the rest of the drawer or piece, depending on where the veneer is missing. So I'll kind of do this as well. And can you see that? Okay. So this one's just a little area. I don't need much. Just here on the corner. Oops. And it's okay, if it goes down on the side of the drawer, that's fine. It'll sand right off, so don't worry about that. It does not have to look perfect. It's kind of like your initial layer of paint or primer. It's not going to look perfect. You're just trying to get good coverage right now. And I'm messy with it. I'm not, there we go. You just kind of want it straight, and so it's going to fill that up. Just going to wipe that off and then put the lid back on. So then from here, what I'm going to do is let this fully dry. Depending on how thick you put it on, this could take hours, it could take overnight. It just depends on your piece. But you want it to be fully dry before you sand any of it. If it's wet, you're just gonna pull it off and you're gonna gunk up your sander. So make sure it's fully dry, let it sit, and then we'll go on to the next step with the sanding. Okay, today is all about sanding and kind of scuff sanding your pieces before you paint them. The mud that I put on this piece is dry, and so I'm gonna kind of show you, I'm gonna kind of do this with me talking, and then I'll kind of do a video and show you how, because the sander is pretty loud. So I'm gonna kind of talk you through the sander and the process, and then I'll kind of do some up close, you know, video of the sander actually working. So like I said, this is the mud, it's all dry. And this piece needed some veneer, you know, touch up. Not all pieces need that. So this would be a step you would obviously skip if you didn't have a piece that needed some veneer touch up in different areas. You wouldn't have this mud part to do. So you would just go straight into the sanding, kind of scuff sanding. And there are a lot of, I'm gonna try and, you know what? I'll just pull the camera closer. There are a lot of paint brands and companies that have products, be it primers, stain blocking primers, even their paints, depending on the paint brand, they will say that you'd have to do no prepping at all. Like you can just put the paint on or use this, you know, primer or stain blocking primer, which is great. But I think for most pieces that you're going to paint, I think that it is a good idea to just give it a little bit of a scuff sanding. It's just going to give you a better the primer, paint, whatever you're using. It's just going to stick better and give you a better outcome. So as far as, oh, here's a little pin. I do not want to step on that. As far as prep sanding, and scuff sanding, you do not need, I have recently got this. I've had it for months now. This Serve Prep Sander is amazing. I have a link for any product that I share. So if you need a link, and I do have a coupon code for this, let me know. But this 3x4 sander is just unbelievable. We have all other kinds of sanders. The orbital sander, the belt sander, the mouse sander. We have all of those too, and they're all great for many projects. And before I had that's all I used on pieces like this. But this sander, it's an investment, but it's going to pay for itself tenfold, just because in the time and stuff that it's going to take you. It takes a lot less time. and it's a lot more gentle. They've got this foam, you can see this foam pad underneath here that you can put on here. They have other pads too, but this foam gets around curves and, you know, like with legs and things, really well. And it's just not so abrasive. Now you can get sandpaper from, you know, a high grade grit sandpaper to a low grit sandpaper, just like any sander. And for a scuff sanding, every piece will be different, but it's not that I really want to rough up the surface. I'm just kind of getting it scuffed a little bit so that the next primer or paint, depending on what you're doing, sticks really well. And so sometimes I find that like some pieces need an 80 grit, some need a 60 grit, some need, like this one right now is a 150 and it's doing okay, as you can see here. So, you know, your 320s and then like higher than that is usually your in-between sandings. So in between coats, you kind of want a finer grit sandpaper. So that's nothing you'd really want to use for your scuff sanding. I mean, unless it's a piece that's just taking it really well with a fine grit sandpaper. But usually you're going to go with a lower grit sandpaper when you are scuff sanding. And so I am going to turn, this sander also hooks up into your shop vac, which is so nice because all of the dust goes into the shop vac. Let me just, need to move this closer to me. It's just so nice. So as you can see, I am in my office, and all of the dust, like I said, goes up into my shop vac here. So when you are first using something like a mud or a filler, I would recommend probably using like a handheld, nothing electrical sander, you know, just like sandpaper, or, you know, you can get the ones that just have a handle and it's just sandpaper and it's not electrical or anything like that. It's not battery operated. It's just your hand. Just so you can kind of, you know, kind of how the mud works, how much pressure you need to put on it, before you use like an electric sander or anything on it, just because it could go too fast for you. And not that that's anything wrong. You can, like I said, you can always put another layer on, wait for it to dry and do it all over again. But if it's your first time using this, I would definitely just use a hand sander. Just so, like I said, it's just so you, once you get in the groove of it, it'll become easier. But just the first couple of times, I would definitely use that. So I'm going to show you here how this works and how I do this. And hopefully my cords will not knock over this camera. So I'm going to turn this shop vac on, so I will not talk while that's on because it is noisy. And I'm just going to do this drawer here, and I'll kind of show you how this works. Okay, so as you can see, as I was sanding there here at the end, I could kind of tell just by looking at it that it was kind of level, but always feel it as you are, if you're, you know, working with the mud, feel it and make sure it's level with the rest of this drawer, right? So you shouldn't be able to rub over here and then go down or rub over here and go up. That just means you need to knock it down a little bit more. It should be straight, flat across with the even level all the way across. So that's what you're trying to do with that sanding. And then, you know, if you didn't have one that needed, you know, veneer touch up, you're just trying to get it scuff sand. So that's it. Like it should, the scuff sanding should not take you hours and hours. It's a quick process. Go over all the surfaces that you're going to paint, and then you are done. When you are done scuff sanding, make sure that you take a damp cloth, a tack cloth, whatever you have, and make sure you wipe off every surface and get in all of the little grooves around the details, because you don't want the primer or the paint you don't want like sanding dust or anything in your primer or your paint when you put it on. So scuff sanding though, it's an important part. It's an important step to do when you are flipping furniture.